Welcome to this incredible journey through the history of India, a land of diverse cultures, religions, and empires. Before the rise of the Indus Valley Civilization, which would become one of the earliest and most sophisticated urban societies in the ancient world, the Indian subcontinent witnessed a long stretch of human development that spanned millions of years. This early history, which began well before the emergence of cities and organized states, was marked by the gradual evolution of human life and culture. These early phases are divided into the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic ages, each representing distinct changes in how human beings interacted with their environment and developed new technologies, social structures, and ways of life. In the Paleolithic period, roughly 2 million years ago to around 10,000 BCE, early humans lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers, relying on the natural landscape to survive. Archaeological evidence from sites like the Soan Valley, now in Pakistan, Atirampakam in Tamil Nadu, and the Bhimbetka rock shelters in Madhya Pradesh shows that these early humans used simple stone tools, such as hand axes and scrapers, to hunt animals, gather plants, and process food. They lived in caves or open-air settlements, often near rivers, where they had better access to resources. The Bhimbetka rock shelters, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, are especially significant because they contain some of the earliest examples of prehistoric art in India. The cave paintings at Bhimbetka depict scenes of hunting, dancing, and animal life, offering a rare glimpse into the lives of Paleolithic humans. As the climate began to warm after the last ice age, around 10,000 BCE, the Mesolithic period, 10,000 BCE to 6,000 BCE, saw significant changes in human life. The melting glaciers and rising temperatures created more favorable conditions for human settlement and the growth of plant and animal populations. Mesolithic humans, while still primarily hunter-gatherers, began to settle in more permanent locations, often near rivers or fertile plains. Sites like Bagor in Rajasthan and Langnaj in Gujarat show evidence of early habitation, with people making use of small, finely crafted stone tools known as microliths. These microliths were used for hunting small game, fishing, and gathering plant-based foods, such as wild grains and fruits. The Mesolithic period also marks the beginning of more organized and structured social groups, with evidence of small communities living in huts or temporary shelters, suggesting a move toward more complex social organization. The real transformation in human society came with the Neolithic period, 600 BCE to 2600 BCE, during which time people began to practice agriculture and domesticate animals. The shift from a nomadic to a settled lifestyle was one of the most significant developments in human history, as it allowed for the growth of stable, permanent communities. Mehrgarh, located in modern-day Pakistan, is one of the most important Neolithic sites in the Indian subcontinent and provides crucial evidence of early farming practices. At Mehrgarh, people cultivated wheat and barley and domesticated animals such as cattle, sheep, and goats. This transition to farming allowed communities to produce surplus food, which in turn led to population growth and the development of larger, more complex settlements. Pottery, another important innovation of the Neolithic period, was used for storing and cooking food, further enhancing the ability of these early societies to sustain larger populations. Other significant Neolithic sites, particularly in South India, also provide evidence of the spread of agricultural life. For example, at Piklahal and Brahmagiri, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of settled agricultural communities that raised cattle and practiced early forms of crop cultivation. The people of these regions developed techniques for clearing forests and cultivating land, and they likely engaged in small-scale trade with neighboring communities. The Neolithic period also saw the beginnings of ritual and religious practices, as evidenced by the discovery of burial sites and small figurines, suggesting that these early communities had a spiritual or ceremonial dimension to their lives. As the Neolithic period progressed, the foundation was laid for the emergence of more complex social, economic, and political structures. The ability to produce surplus food, combined with technological advancements such as pottery, weaving, and metallurgy, enabled the growth of larger settlements and the rise of specialized professions. These developments set the stage for the emergence of the Indus Valley Civilization around 2600 BCE, one of the world's first great urban cultures. The cities of Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and others would come to represent the pinnacle of early human achievement in South Asia, but their roots lay deep in the gradual advances made by India's prehistoric peoples. Thus, while the Indus Valley Civilization often takes center stage in discussions of ancient India, it is important to remember that its emergence was part of a much longer process of human evolution and societal development. The shift from simple stone tools to farming, from temporary shelters to permanent settlements, and from isolated groups to more organized communities, all contributed to the eventual rise of one of the ancient world's most remarkable civilizations. We'll explore 5,000 years of Indian history, from the Indus Valley Civilization to the modern Republic of India. The history of India, a 5,000-year journey, ancient India, 3300 BCE to 600 BCE. Our journey begins in the northwestern region of the Indian subcontinent, in what is now Pakistan and northwest India. The Indus Valley Civilization, one of the world's earliest urban civilizations, flourished here between 3300 BCE and 1300 BCE. It was a highly developed culture, with well-planned cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. These cities boasted advanced drainage systems, standardized weights and measures, and impressive craftsmanship in pottery, jewelry, and seals. The social organization of the Indus people remains a mystery, as their script has yet to be fully deciphered. Yet, their urban planning reveals a highly organized society, likely centered around trade and agriculture. The Indus Valley Civilization's sudden decline around 1300 BCE has long puzzled historians. Various theories, including climate change, natural disasters, and invasions, have been suggested. However, the civilization's influence can be seen in later cultures that emerged in the region, particularly in their agricultural practices and craftsmanship. After the decline of the Indus Valley Civilization, the subcontinent saw a new wave of settlers, the Indo-Aryans, arriving around 1500 BCE. This ushered in the Vedic period, surnamed after the Vedas, the earliest known religious texts of India, which form the foundation of Hinduism. The Vedas were composed in Sanskrit, an Indo-European language brought by these new settlers. Society during this period became more stratified with the emergence of the Varna system, which categorized people into different social classes. These categories evolved into what we now recognize as the caste system, although it was more fluid in its early days. The Vedic period was also a time of religious and philosophical development. The Rig Veda, the oldest of the Vedas, contains hymns dedicated to various deities, emphasizing natural forces like fire, wind, and rain. Over time, these religious practices evolved, and the focus shifted from ritual sacrifice to introspection and spiritual knowledge. The later Vedic texts, particularly the Upanishads, introduced concepts like karma, dharma, and moksha, which became central to Indian spirituality. By 600 BCE, the Indian subcontinent had fragmented into several powerful kingdoms, known as the Mahajanapadas. 16 of these kingdoms dominated the northern plains, including Magadha, Kosala, and Avanti. The rise of these city-states marked a shift from tribal communities to more centralized forms of governance. Magadha, in particular, would become a dominant force in the region, laying the foundation for the first large empires in Indian history. During this time, India also witnessed significant religious and philosophical developments. In the 6th century BCE, two new religions emerged, Jainism and Buddhism. Both religions rejected the rigid caste system and the ritual sacrifices of Vedic Hinduism. Mahavira, the founder of Jainism, taught a path of non-violence, ahimsa, and asceticism. Gautama Buddha, who founded Buddhism, preached the middle way, a path of moderation between extreme asceticism and indulgence. His teachings, which included the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, would go on to influence not only India but much of Asia. Four Noble Truths are the essence of the Buddha's teachings and explain the nature of suffering and the way out of it. 1. The truth of suffering, dukkha. The first noble truth acknowledges that suffering, dukkha, is an inherent part of existence. It is often misunderstood as a pessimistic view, but in reality, it's a realistic observation of life. Suffering manifests in various forms: physical pain, illness, aging, death. Emotional suffering, unhappiness, dissatisfaction, loss. Existential suffering, the constant changes in life, including the impermanence of happiness, relationships, and material possessions. Dukkha includes not just overt suffering but also the subtle dissatisfaction that comes from the transient nature of life, even in pleasurable moments. 2. The truth of the cause of suffering, samudaya. The second truth identifies tanha, craving or desire, as the root cause of suffering. This desire takes three forms: desire for sense pleasures, kama tanha, craving for pleasant experiences through the senses, sight, sound, taste, touch, etc. Desire for existence or becoming, bhava tanha. the desire to retain certain identities, states, or experiences, e.g., fame, power, or eternal life. Desire for non-existence, vibhava tanha, the desire to escape or avoid unpleasant experiences or states of being, e.g., fear of death or pain. Tanha leads to attachment, and when we cling to things that are impermanent, we inevitably experience suffering when they change or disappear. 3. The truth of the cessation of suffering, nirodha, the third noble truth teaches that it is possible to end suffering by eliminating its cause, craving and attachment. This state of cessation is known as nirvana, or nibbana in Pali, which represents the ultimate liberation and freedom from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara. Nirvana is not simply a state of nothingness but the end of greed, hatred, and ignorance, resulting in lasting peace and happiness. It is a state where the mind is free from delusion and attachment. 4. The truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering, magga, the fourth noble truth outlines the eightfold path as the method to achieve the cessation of suffering. It is a practical guide for ethical and mental discipline that leads to wisdom and liberation. The eightfold path is divided into 3 categories: wisdom, panna, ethical conduct, sila, and mental discipline, samadhi. Each component of the path is interdependent, and they are meant to be practiced simultaneously rather than sequentially. Wisdom, panna. 1. Right view, samadhi. Right view involves understanding the world as it truly is, especially recognizing the 4 noble truths and the law of karma, cause and effect. It means seeing the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all things. This wisdom helps one see beyond illusions and delusions, laying the foundation for a clear path to enlightenment. 2. Right intention, samma sankappa. Right intention refers to the mental commitment to ethical and spiritual growth. It involves cultivating thoughts of renunciation, letting go of attachment to sensory pleasures and selfish desires. Goodwill, promoting compassion and love rather than ill will or hatred. Harmlessness, non-violence and kindness to all living beings. Ethical conduct, sila. 3. Right speech, samavaka. Right speech encourages truthful, kind, and beneficial communication. It involves avoiding lying, misleading others with falsehoods. Harsh speech, speaking in a way that causes harm or offense. Gossip, idle or harmful talk about others. Divisive speech, speaking in a way that causes discord. 4. Right action, samma kammanta. Right action means living in a way that does not harm others and fosters moral integrity. It includes avoiding killing, not causing harm to any living being. Avoiding stealing, not taking what is not freely given. Avoiding sexual misconduct, engaging in relationships that are respectful, consensual, and not harmful. 5. Right livelihood, samarajiva. Right livelihood involves earning a living in a way that does not cause harm to others or oneself. This excludes professions that directly or indirectly harm other beings, e.g., trading in weapons, intoxicants, or exploitation of living beings. Mental discipline, samadhi. 6. Right effort, samavayama. Right effort refers to the cultivation of wholesome mental states and the prevention of unwholesome states. It includes avoiding unwholesome states, preventing the arising of negative mental habits like anger, greed, or delusion. Abandoning unwholesome states, overcoming and eliminating existing negative habits. Developing wholesome states, cultivating virtues like kindness, compassion, and mindfulness. Maintaining wholesome states, sustaining positive qualities once they have been developed. 7. Right mindfulness, samasati. Right mindfulness involves paying close attention to the present moment without attachment or aversion. It includes awareness of body, being mindful of bodily sensations and actions. Feelings, observing emotions without getting attached to them. Mind, recognizing mental states and tendencies. Dharmas, understanding the nature of phenomena as they arise and pass. 8. Right concentration, samasamadhi. Right concentration is the practice of focused meditation, samadhi, that leads to deeper states of absorption and calm. It involves training the mind to become deeply concentrated, free from distractions, which eventually leads to insight and enlightenment. This is often achieved through jhanas, meditative absorptions, which are stages of increasingly deep concentration. The interconnection of the 4 noble truths and the Eightfold Path. The 4 noble truths provide the framework for understanding the problem, suffering, and its solution, cessation of suffering, while the Eightfold Path is the practical guide for achieving this goal. The path not only addresses moral behavior but also emphasizes mental cultivation and wisdom, which are essential for true liberation from suffering. In essence, the first noble truth acknowledges the existence of suffering. The second noble truth identifies the cause of suffering, craving. The third noble truth assures that suffering can end. The fourth noble truth provides the path to end suffering, embodied in the Eightfold Path. Conclusion: the path to liberation, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path provide a comprehensive system for understanding human suffering and the way out of it. They are not merely philosophical concepts but practical teachings meant to be lived and experienced. Through cultivating wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline, one can gradually overcome suffering and attain a state of peace, happiness, and ultimate liberation, nirvana. The rise of empires, 600 BCE to 550 CE. The 4th century BCE saw the rise of India's first great empire under the leadership of Chandragupta Maurya. The Maurya Empire, founded in 322 BCE, was one of the largest and most powerful political entities in ancient India. Chandragupta's rise to power was aided by his advisor, Chanakya, a brilliant strategist whose treatise, the Arthashastra, is still studied today for its insights on statecraft, economics, and military strategy. Chandragupta defeated the Nanda dynasty and expanded his empire across northern India and beyond, consolidating power in a way that had never been done before. His centralized administration, with a focus on bureaucracy and taxation, became a model for future empires. Chandragupta's empire extended from Bengal in the east to modern-day Afghanistan in the west. He even made a peace treaty with the Greek general Seleucus, who had succeeded Alexander the Great in the region. After Chandragupta, his grandson Ashoka became one of India's most famous rulers. Ashoka's early reign was marked by military conquests, including the brutal Kalinga War. The devastation he witnessed during this campaign profoundly changed him, and he converted to Buddhism, renouncing violence and committing his life to spreading the teachings of the Buddha. Ashoka's inscriptions, carved on rocks and pillars across his empire, detail his policies of non-violence, religious tolerance, and welfare for his subjects. These edicts are some of the earliest examples of a ruler advocating for ethical governance. Ashoka's promotion of Buddhism led to the spread of the religion beyond India's borders, into Central Asia, China, and Southeast Asia. Under his reign, the Maurya Empire reached its zenith, covering nearly all of the Indian subcontinent, but after his death, the empire began to decline. The Mauryas were followed by the Shunga and Kanva dynasties, which were much smaller and less centralized. In the 4th century CE, the Gupta Empire rose to prominence, marking a golden age of Indian culture, science, and art. The Gupta Empire, under rulers like Chandragupta I and Samudragupta, presided over a period of political stability, economic prosperity, and cultural flourishing. This era saw remarkable achievements in mathematics, astronomy, and literature. Indian mathematicians like Aryabhata made groundbreaking advances, including the concept of zero and the decimal system, which would later spread to the rest of the world through Islamic scholars. The Gupta period is also known for its contributions to Sanskrit literature, with works like Kalidasa's Shakuntala and the Panchatantra continuing to influence literature today. The Gupta emperors were great patrons of art and architecture, commissioning numerous temples, sculptures, and paintings that reflect the evolving religious and cultural landscape of India. Religion during this time underwent significant changes. Hinduism became more defined, with the worship of deities like Vishnu, Shiva, and Devi becoming more popular. Temples dedicated to these gods were built, and the practice of temple-based worship became more widespread. Buddhism and Jainism continued to flourish, particularly in the south and in regions where Ashoka's influence had been strongest. Medieval India, 550 CE to 1526 CE. After the decline of the Gupta Empire, India entered a period of regional kingdoms. In the north, the Rajputs emerged as a dominant force, establishing a number of small but powerful kingdoms. The Rajputs were known for their fierce warrior culture and their code of chivalry. However, their constant internecine warfare left them vulnerable to external invasions. In the south, powerful dynasties like the Pallavas, Cholas, and Chalukyas ruled over large territories. The Cholas, in particular, established a maritime empire, extending their influence over Southeast Asia. They built monumental temples, like the Brihadiswara temple in Tanjavur, which remains an architectural marvel to this day. South India became a center for trade and culture, with vibrant exchanges with Southeast Asia, particularly during the reign of the Cholas. The rise of Islam in India began in earnest in the 8th century, when Arab traders established settlements along the western coast. However, it wasn't until the 12th century that Islamic dynasties, like the Ghurids, began to make inroads into northern India. The conquest of Delhi in 1192 marked the beginning of the Delhi Sultanate, a series of dynasties that ruled over large parts of northern India for more than 300 years. The Delhi Sultanate was a time of cultural and architectural fusion, as Persian, Central Asian, and Indian influences blended together. The sultans commissioned grand mosques, forts, and tombs, some of which, like the Qutb Minar, still stand today. The arrival of Islam also led to the rise of the Sufi movement in India. Sufi saints, with their emphasis on personal devotion to God, found a receptive audience among both Muslims and Hindus. The Bhakti movement, a similar devotional movement within Hinduism, also flourished during this time. Saints like Kabir and Mirabai preached a message of love and devotion that transcended religious boundaries. In the south, the Vijayanagara Empire rose to prominence in the 14th century, resisting the incursions of the Delhi Sultanate and later the Bahmani Sultanate. The Vijayanagara Empire was known for its military prowess and its patronage of art, literature, and religion. The capital, Vijayanagara, modern-day Hampi, was one of the largest and most prosperous cities in the world at its height. The empire was a bulwark of Hindu culture, and its rulers commissioned massive temples, like the Virupaksha temple, and supported the revival of classical Sanskrit literature. The Mughal Empire, 1526 CE to 1857 CE, in 1526, Babur, a descendant of Timur and Genghis Khan, defeated the Delhi Sultanate at the Battle of Panipat, establishing the Mughal Empire. Babur's successors, particularly Akbar, would go on to build one of the most powerful empires in the world. Akbar's reign was marked by military conquests, but also by a policy of religious tolerance and administrative reforms. He sought to create a cohesive empire where people of different faiths could coexist. Akbar abolished the jizya tax on non-Muslims and encouraged interfaith dialogue, even inviting scholars from Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, and other faiths to his court. His policy of sul-i-kul, or universal tolerance, set him apart from many rulers of his time. Akbar also implemented important administrative reforms, centralizing the empire's bureaucracy and creating a system of provincial governors, or subedas, who answered directly to him. His reforms helped ensure that the empire could be governed effectively over vast territories. Akbar's reign saw a flourishing of the arts, including architecture, painting, and literature. The Mughal miniature paintings of this period are famous for their intricate detail and vibrant colors. Akbar also commissioned the building of great monuments, including the city of Fatehpur Sikri, a masterpiece of Indo-Islamic architecture. Akbar's successors, Jahangir and Shah Jahan, continued his legacy of expansion and cultural patronage. Shah Jahan is perhaps best remembered for commissioning the Taj Mahal, built in memory of his wife Mumtaz Mahal. This white marble mausoleum, combining Persian, Islamic, and Indian architectural styles, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most iconic buildings in the world. Let's dive into one of the most fascinating relationships from India's Mughal era, the bond between Emperor Abu Fath Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar and his favorite wife, Mariam Uzed-Zamani, more popularly known as Jodha Bai. Now, Akbar, the third Mughal emperor, was already a larger-than-life figure, known for his military conquests, his administrative genius, and his efforts to unify a deeply diverse India. But his personal life, especially his relationship with Jodha Bai, is equally compelling. So, how did this story start? In 1562, Akbar married Jodha Bai, a Rajput princess, as part of a strategic political alliance. At the time, the Rajputs were powerful Hindu rulers in Rajasthan, and marrying a Rajput princess was a clever way for Akbar to secure a stable relationship with the Rajput kingdoms. But here's the interesting part. Despite this being a political alliance, Akbar allowed Jodha Bai to practice her Hindu faith freely within the palace. In fact, he even participated in some of the Hindu rituals she observed. It was a remarkable example of religious tolerance, something Akbar is widely praised for to this day. Now, let's talk about their relationship. Over time, what began as a political marriage turned into something deeper. Jodha Bai became Akbar's favorite wife, admired not only for her beauty but for her intelligence and wisdom. She wasn't just a silent figure in the background, she had a significant influence on Akbar and, by extension, the Mughal court. Her voice mattered, and she played an active role in the affairs of the empire. Jodha Bai also gave birth to Akbar's heir, Prince Salim, who would later become Emperor Jahangir. Before Prince Salim, she gave birth to twin sons, Mirza Hassan and Mirza Hussain, but tragically, they both passed away in infancy. Despite these personal losses, the birth of Prince Salim ensured the continuation of the Mughal dynasty. But Jodha Bai's legacy isn't just about being the mother of an emperor. Her marriage to Akbar marked the beginning of a unique cultural exchange between the Mughals and the Rajputs. Her family benefited from this alliance, with many Rajputs holding high-ranking positions in the Mughal court. It also symbolized Akbar's broader vision of religious and cultural unity, which was a cornerstone of his rule. He didn't just conquer territories, he sought to win hearts, and Jodha Bai was central to that vision. Imagine this, a Mughal emperor, traditionally Muslim, marrying a Hindu princess and not only respecting her religion but embracing it in small, significant ways. This relationship shows us that history isn't just about battles and politics, it's also shaped by personal connections, mutual respect, and sometimes, even love. However, Shah Jahan's reign also marked the beginning of the Mughal Empire's slow decline. His son, Aurangzeb, ascended to the throne after a bitter succession struggle. Unlike his great-grandfather Akbar, Aurangzeb was less tolerant of religious diversity. He reimposed the jizya tax on non-Muslims and destroyed several Hindu temples, alienating a large portion of the population. His military campaigns in the Deccan, aimed at expanding the empire's territory, were costly and strained the empire's resources. Aurangzeb's long reign saw the empire stretch to its limits, and after his death in 1707, the Mughal Empire began to fragment. Regional powers like the Marathas in western India, the Sikhs in Punjab, and the Nawabs of Bengal asserted their independence. The empire, once vast and powerful, gradually weakened, becoming more of a symbolic authority while local rulers exercised real control. The weakening of the Mughal Empire coincided with the increasing influence of European trading companies, particularly the British East India Company. The company had been trading in India since the early 17th century, but by the mid-18th century, it began to play a more direct role in Indian politics. In 1757, at the Battle of Plassey, British forces under Robert Clive defeated the Nawab of Bengal, establishing British dominance in the region. Colonial India, 1757 CE to 1947 CE. The victory at Plassey marked the beginning of British colonial rule in India, first through the East India Company and later, after the Indian Rebellion of 1857, through direct control by the British Crown. The British East India Company expanded its control over much of India through a combination of military force, diplomacy, and economic manipulation. Indian rulers were often coerced into signing treaties that granted the British political and economic control in exchange for protection. By the early 19th century, the British had established dominance over most of India, from Bengal in the east to Punjab in the west. British colonial rule brought significant changes to Indian society, economy, and governance. The British introduced Western education, legal systems, and infrastructure like railways and telegraphs. However, these changes were designed primarily to benefit the colonial administration and British economic interests. Indian industries, particularly textiles, suffered as British goods flooded the market. Indian farmers were forced to grow cash crops like indigo and cotton for export, leading to widespread poverty and famine. The exploitation of India's resources and people by the British sparked growing resentment and calls for independence. The 1857 Indian Rebellion, also known as the First War of Independence, was a widespread but ultimately unsuccessful uprising against British rule. The rebellion began among Indian soldiers, or sepoys, in the British Army, but it quickly spread to civilians and regional rulers who were discontent with British policies. The brutal suppression of the rebellion marked a turning point in British policy, leading to the dissolution of the East India Company and the establishment of direct British rule, known as the British Raj. Under the Raj, India was ruled by a viceroy appointed by the British Crown, and the colonial administration sought to consolidate its control over the subcontinent. However, resistance to British rule continued to grow. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw the rise of Indian nationalism, with leaders like Dadabhai Naoroji, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Annie Besant calling for greater self-rule. In 1885, the Indian National Congress was founded, becoming the principal organization fighting for Indian independence. At first, the Congress sought to work within the framework of British rule, advocating for reforms and greater representation for Indians in the colonial government. However, by the early 20th century, the call for complete independence began to gain momentum. One of the most influential figures in the Indian independence movement was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, known as Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi returned to India from South Africa in 1915 and quickly became a leader of the nationalist movement. He advocated for non-violent resistance, or satyagraha, as a way to oppose British rule. His campaigns, such as the Salt March of 1930, inspired millions of Indians to join the struggle for independence. Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence, combined with mass civil disobedience, brought international attention to the Indian independence movement. Other leaders, like Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhas Chandra Bose, also played key roles in the fight for freedom. While Gandhi advocated for peaceful resistance, Bose believed in more direct, militant action and sought help from Germany and Japan during World War II to overthrow the British. The final years of British rule in India were marked by increasing tension between Hindus and Muslims. The Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, advocated for the creation of a separate Muslim state, which eventually led to the partition of India in 1947. The Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, played a pivotal role in shaping the modern history of South Asia, particularly in the creation of Pakistan and the partition of India in 1947. To understand this development, we need to look at the political and social landscape of India in the early 20th century, particularly the growing divide between the Hindu and Muslim communities within British India. Formation of the Muslim League. The All India Muslim League was established in 1906 in response to the perceived underrepresentation of Muslims in Indian politics. The League sought to protect Muslim interests, particularly in the context of British colonial rule and growing demands for Indian self-governance. Early on, the Muslim League's aims were primarily to safeguard the political rights of Muslims within a united India and ensure that they were not overshadowed by the Hindu majority, represented predominantly by the Indian National Congress. Jinnah's leadership and shift in focus. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, a prominent lawyer and politician, initially sought cooperation between the Congress and the Muslim League for a unified Indian independence. He was a member of both the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, and he advocated for Hindu-Muslim unity in the early 1900s. However, as tensions between the communities grew, especially over issues of representation and religious identity, Jinnah's outlook began to change. By the 1930s, Jinnah emerged as the undisputed leader of the Muslim League. He began to shift the League's focus from securing political representation within a united India to advocating for a separate Muslim state. This transformation was fueled by concerns that Muslims, despite being a significant minority, would be politically and economically marginalized in a Hindu-majority independent India. The two-nation theory. Jinnah's most influential contribution to the political discourse was the two-nation theory, which argued that Muslims and Hindus were distinct nations with their own cultural and religious identities. He believed that the only way to ensure the protection of Muslim rights and interests was to create an independent state for Muslims. This led to the demand for the creation of Pakistan, a separate nation that would serve as a homeland for Muslims. In his famous speech in Lahore in 1940, Jinnah declared that Muslims were not a minority but a separate nation. This speech marked a turning point, as it officially articulated the League's demand for the creation of Pakistan. The road to partition. The demand for Pakistan gained traction during World War II, as the British government sought Indian support for the war effort and began discussing the eventual transfer of power to Indian leaders. The British recognized the political strength of both the Indian National Congress, led by figures like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, and the Muslim League under Jinnah. In the years leading up to independence, tensions between the two parties escalated. The Congress envisioned a united India with a strong central government, while the Muslim League insisted on the creation of a separate Muslim state. The British, caught between these conflicting visions, eventually agreed to the partition of India as a solution to the political deadlock. The partition of India in 1947. In 1947, the British government, led by Lord Mountbatten, announced the partition of India into two independent nations, India and Pakistan. Pakistan was created as a Muslim-majority state, comprising two geographically separated regions, West Pakistan, modern-day Pakistan, and East Pakistan, which later became Bangladesh in 1971. India was established as a secular state with a Hindu majority. The partition led to one of the largest mass migrations in history, as millions of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs moved across the newly drawn borders. Tragically, the partition also resulted in widespread violence, with communal riots claiming hundreds of thousands of lives. The legacy of partition still affects India and Pakistan's relationship today, particularly regarding the Kashmir conflict. Jinnah's legacy, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, is remembered as the father of the nation in Pakistan. His leadership in the Muslim League and his vision of Pakistan as a homeland for Muslims are central to his legacy. However, his vision for Pakistan was not purely religious. Jinnah envisioned a democratic, secular state where Muslims could live freely, but also where minorities would have rights and protection. In conclusion, the Muslim League's advocacy for a separate Muslim state under Jinnah's leadership led to the partition of India in 1947, reshaping the political map of South Asia. While it provided Muslims with a homeland, the partition left deep scars, resulting in decades of tension between India and Pakistan. Independent India, 1947 CE, present, India finally achieved independence on August 15, 1947. However, the joy of independence was tempered by the partition, which divided British India into two separate nations, Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan. The partition led to one of the largest mass migrations in human history, as millions of Hindus and Muslims crossed the newly drawn borders. The violence and displacement caused by partition left deep scars, and the relationship between India and Pakistan has been fraught with tension and conflict ever since. After independence, India became a democratic republic with the adoption of a new constitution in 1950. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chief architect of the constitution, ensured that India's new government would be based on principles of social justice, equality, and secularism. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, India embarked on an ambitious program of modernization and industrialization. Nehru's government focused on building a self-sufficient economy, emphasizing state-led development in key industries like steel, energy, and manufacturing. India's foreign policy during the Cold War was marked by its commitment to non-alignment. Nehru sought to keep India independent from the influence of both the United States and the Soviet Union, instead advocating for peaceful coexistence and cooperation among nations. In the decades following independence, India faced numerous challenges, including poverty, illiteracy, and the integration of princely states into the Indian Union. Yet, the country made significant strides in areas like agriculture, through the Green Revolution, and in science and technology, with the establishment of institutions like the Indian Institutes of Technology, IITs, and the Indian Space Research Organisation, ISRO. India's democracy has endured despite periods of political turmoil, such as the emergency declared by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1975. Economic reforms in the 1990s, led by Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and Finance Minister Manmohan Singh, liberalized the Indian economy, leading to rapid economic growth and the rise of India as a global economic power. The story of India does not end with independence. In fact, the post-1947 period has been as dynamic and eventful as the millennia that preceded it. From economic reforms to technological achievements, from navigating internal challenges to becoming a key player on the global stage, modern India's trajectory has been both inspiring and complex. The early years of independence. In the immediate aftermath of independence, India faced monumental challenges. The trauma of partition had left the nation with deep wounds. Over 1 million people were killed, and nearly 15 million were displaced. Integrating the princely states into the Indian Union was another major hurdle. Led by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, known as the Iron Man of India, the Indian government successfully negotiated with or annexed over 500 princely states, ensuring the territorial integrity of the country. Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, who served from 1947 to 1964, laid the foundations of modern India. He envisioned a secular, democratic, and socialist country where the government would play a key role in driving economic development. Nehru's policy of non-alignment allowed India to avoid aligning with either the US or the USSR during the Cold War, ensuring that India maintained its strategic independence while receiving aid and cooperation from both sides. However, Nehru's tenure was not without difficulties. In 1962, India fought a brief but disastrous war with China, which resulted in the loss of territory in the northern Himalayan regions. This conflict exposed the weaknesses in India's defense capabilities and strained Nehru's leadership. The Green Revolution and economic growth in the decades following independence, India faced severe food shortages and famine. To address this, India embarked on the Green Revolution in the 1960s and 1970s, under the leadership of Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri and agricultural scientist M.S. Swaminathan. The Green Revolution introduced high-yielding varieties of seeds, modern irrigation techniques, and the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. As a result, India's agricultural productivity increased significantly, turning the country from a food deficit nation into one of the largest agricultural producers in the world. However, the Green Revolution also had its downsides. It led to environmental degradation and widened the gap between rich and poor farmers, as wealthier farmers were better able to afford the new technologies. Yet, despite its shortcomings, the Green Revolution played a crucial role in alleviating hunger and poverty in India. The emergency, 1975–1977, India's democracy faced its most significant test in the mid-1970s during the period known as the emergency. In 1975, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi declared a state of emergency, citing internal disturbances and economic instability. During the emergency, fundamental rights were suspended, opposition leaders were jailed, and the press was heavily censored. It was a dark chapter in Indian democracy, as political dissent was suppressed and elections were postponed. Indira Gandhi's move to centralize power and weaken democratic institutions sparked widespread protests. The emergency ended in 1977, when elections were held, and Indira Gandhi's Congress party was defeated by the Janata Party, marking a brief period of non-Congress rule. Despite the abuses of power during this time, the fact that India was able to return to democratic governance after such a crisis is a testament to the resilience of its institutions. Economic liberalization and the rise of modern India. In 1991, India faced a severe balance of payments crisis, which forced the government, led by Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and Finance Minister Manmohan Singh, to initiate sweeping economic reforms. These reforms liberalized the Indian economy, opening it up to foreign investment, reducing government control over industries, and promoting privatization and deregulation. The liberalization of the economy led to rapid economic growth, transforming India into one of the fastest-growing economies in the world. The IT and services sectors boomed, making India a global hub for software development and outsourcing. Cities like Bangalore and Hyderabad became known as India's Silicon Valley. The economic reforms of the 1990s lifted millions out of poverty and created a burgeoning middle class. However, the benefits of economic liberalization were not evenly distributed, and inequality became a growing concern. Rural areas and marginalized communities did not experience the same level of growth as urban centers, leading to social tensions and political unrest. India's scientific and technological advancements. India's achievements in science and technology in the modern era have been nothing short of remarkable. The Indian Space Research Organisation, ISRO, has become a world leader in space exploration and satellite technology. In 2014, India became the first Asian country to reach Mars with its Mangalyaan mission, and in 2019, ISRO attempted a soft landing on the Moon with the Chandrayaan-2 mission. India's space program is a source of national pride and has established the country as a significant player in the global space race. In addition to its space program, India has made strides in fields like medicine, biotechnology, and information technology. Indian scientists and engineers have contributed to global advancements in pharmaceuticals, especially in the production of affordable generic drugs. India is often referred to as the pharmacy of the world, as it produces a significant portion of the world's vaccines and essential medicines. Challenges and opportunities in the 21st century. As India moves further into the 21st century, it faces both immense challenges and tremendous opportunities. One of the biggest challenges is addressing the issue of social inequality, particularly with regard to caste, gender, and religion. Despite legal protections, caste-based discrimination persists, especially in rural areas. Women's rights have also become a focal point, with movements pushing for greater gender equality and an end to gender-based violence. Religious tensions between Hindus, Muslims, and other religious communities have occasionally erupted into violence, highlighting the ongoing challenge of maintaining communal harmony in a diverse country. Political leadership will need to navigate these complexities to ensure that India remains a secular and pluralistic society. On the economic front, India's young population presents a unique opportunity for growth, but also a challenge in terms of job creation and education. The country must find ways to harness the potential of its youth through investments in education, infrastructure, and innovation. The growing tech industry and the push for digitalization, along with efforts to boost manufacturing under the Make in India initiative, are key components of India's economic strategy. India's role on the global stage has also expanded significantly. As a founding member of the non-aligned movement, India has long pursued an independent foreign policy, but in recent decades, it has built strategic partnerships with the United States, European Union, Russia, and its Asian neighbors. India is also a key player in international organizations like the United Nations and the G20, advocating for climate action, peacekeeping, and sustainable development. Notable figures in the history of India. 1. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, 1875 to 1950, period. Post-independence, 1947 onward. Notes. Known as the Iron Man of India, Patel played a crucial role in the unification of over 500 princely states into the Indian Union after independence. His diplomatic acumen and determination ensured India's territorial integrity. Patel also laid the foundations of India's administrative services and was a strong advocate for national unity. His legacy includes the creation of a united, independent India, despite immense post-partition challenges. 2. Jawaharlal Nehru, 1889 to 1964, period. Early years of independence, 1947 to 1964. Notes. India's first Prime Minister, Nehru was instrumental in shaping the country's political, social, and economic foundations. He championed a secular, democratic, and socialist vision for India, promoting state-led economic development through his 5-year plans. Nehru's non-alignment policy allowed India to maintain strategic independence during the Cold War. His legacy includes the establishment of India as a democratic republic and his focus on scientific and industrial development. 3. Lal Bahadur Shastri, 1904–1966, period. 1960s, Prime Minister 1964 to 1966. Notes. Shastri was the second Prime Minister of India, best known for leading the country during the 1965 war with Pakistan. His slogan, Jai Jawan Jai Kisan, Hail the Soldier, Hail the Farmer, reflected his focus on both national defense and agricultural reforms. He played a pivotal role in the success of the Green Revolution, which transformed India from a food deficit nation to a food surplus one. 4. M.S. Swaminathan, 1925 to 2023, period. The Green Revolution, 1960s–1970s. Notes. Often referred to as the father of India's Green Revolution, Swaminathan was an agricultural scientist who introduced high-yielding varieties of wheat and rice to Indian farmers. His innovations, alongside modern irrigation and fertilizers, helped boost India's agricultural productivity and alleviate famine. Swaminathan's work had lasting impacts on India's food security and rural economy. 5. Indira Gandhi, 1917 to 1984, period. The Emergency, 1975–1977. Notes. The daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru and the first female Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi ruled with both strength and controversy. During her time in office, she implemented significant reforms, including the nationalization of banks and the abolition of princely privileges. However, her imposition of the emergency in 1975, where civil liberties were suspended and opposition leaders imprisoned, marked a dark period in Indian democracy. Despite this, she was re-elected after the emergency ended and played a significant role in shaping modern India. 6. P.V. Narasimha Rao, 1921 to 2004, period. Economic liberalization, 1991 to 1996. Notes. As Prime Minister, Rao is best known for leading India through a transformative period of economic reforms. His government, with Finance Minister Manmohan Singh, initiated policies that liberalized India's economy, moving away from socialist central planning to a market-oriented model. These reforms opened India to global trade, foreign investment, and rapid economic growth, reshaping the country's economic landscape. 7. Manmohan Singh, 1932–present, period. Economic liberalization, 1991 and beyond. Notes. Singh, as finance minister, played a critical role in designing and implementing India's economic reforms in 1991. He later served as Prime Minister, 2004–2014, and continued to advocate for economic growth, poverty alleviation, and technological advancements. Under his leadership, India's economy experienced significant growth, and he emphasized the importance of India's role in the global economy. 8. APJ Abdul Kalam, 1931–2015, period. India's scientific and technological advancements, 2000s. Notes. A prominent aerospace scientist and the 11th President of India, Kalam is remembered for his contributions to India's missile and nuclear technology programs. He was a key figure in the development of India's ballistic missile and space technology programs, earning him the title Missile Man of India. His vision for India as a developed, knowledge-driven economy has inspired generations of Indians, especially youth. 9. Vikram Sarabhai, 1919 to 1971, period. India's space program, 1960s onward. Notes: Sarabhai was the founder of the Indian Space Research Organisation, ISRO, and is considered the father of the Indian space program. He laid the groundwork for India's space exploration efforts, emphasizing the peaceful use of space technology for national development. His efforts helped launch India's satellite program, making ISRO a global leader in space exploration. 10.
Chandrayaan to team.
2019, period. India's space achievements, 2019. Notes: led by ISRO, the Chandrayaan-2 mission sought to achieve a soft landing on the moon. Though partially unsuccessful, the mission was a landmark in India's space exploration journey, building on the earlier success of the Mars orbiter mission, Mangalyaan. The Chandrayaan-2 team continues to inspire India's ambitions in space exploration and scientific research. 11. Birsa Munda, 1875 to 1900, period. Tribal resistance and the early independence movement. Notes: a tribal leader from Jharkhand, Birsa Munda was a revolutionary figure who led a tribal rebellion against British rule and missionary activities in the late 19th century. He is revered as a folk hero and is remembered for his efforts to protect tribal rights and preserve indigenous culture. 12. B.R. Ambedkar, 1891 to 1956, period. Post-independence, drafting the Constitution. Notes: Ambedkar was a key architect of the Indian Constitution and a tireless advocate for the rights of Dalits, formerly known as untouchables. He fought against caste-based discrimination and worked to secure social justice through legal and institutional reforms. His contributions to shaping India's democratic and legal frameworks remain unparalleled. 13. Mahatma Gandhi, 1869 to 1948, period. Indian independence movement. Notes: Gandhi is perhaps the most iconic figure in India's struggle for independence. Through non-violence, ahimsa, and civil disobedience, Gandhi mobilized millions in the fight against British colonial rule. His philosophy of peaceful resistance has influenced global civil rights movements, and he is remembered as the father of the nation in India. 14. Subhas Chandra Bose, 1897 to 1945, period. Indian independence movement, World War II era. Notes: Bose was a charismatic and militant leader in the Indian independence struggle, known for his efforts to seek foreign assistance to expel British rule. He formed the Indian National Army, INA, during World War II with support from Axis powers, hoping to liberate India militarily. Though controversial, his contributions to India's freedom struggle are widely recognized. 15. Rajendra Prasad, 1884 to 1963, period. Post-independence, first President of India. Notes: Rajendra Prasad was the first President of independent India and played a significant role in shaping the early Indian Republic. As a close associate of Gandhi, Prasad contributed to the independence movement and later ensured the smooth functioning of India's democratic institutions. This breakdown offers a comprehensive view of the notable figures discussed in the post-independence narrative, highlighting their contributions across politics, science, social justice, and economic reforms. Each of these figures played a pivotal role in shaping modern India. Conclusion: India's journey forward. India's history is a testament to its resilience, diversity, and capacity for reinvention. From the Indus Valley civilization to the modern republic, India has weathered invasions, colonialism, partition, and internal challenges, emerging as a vibrant democracy and a global economic powerhouse. As India looks to the future, it must balance tradition with modernity, growth with sustainability, and progress with social justice. The challenges are significant, but the potential for greatness is even greater. India's rich cultural heritage, its technological innovations, and its democratic ideals continue to inspire not just its own citizens, but people around the world. As we conclude this in-depth exploration of India's history, one thing is clear: India's story is far from over. The lessons of its past will continue to shape its future, and the world will watch closely as India strides confidently into the 21st century and beyond. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of India. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the fascinating stories of our world.